Here. If you have a question for Mr. Bob Pollock from the Indiana County Extension Office, give him a call right now at 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. That's 349-9227. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's kind of windy out there.
It's kind of windy.
Yeah. And
very windy.
It's also very wet. We got a ton of rain yesterday. I don't know how many inches we got. I'd have to check Pollock, Pennsylvania American Water Company, and find out what the total amount was. But, isolated areas could get much more than any other area.
That's right.
So you had the areas that might have gotten 3 or 4 inches of rain yesterday. All of a sudden, things start swelling up. Water overruns the banks and everything. So what happens to, for instance, a garden that's now been stripped of all of its plants because it's that time of the year, and you get water like that just floods over top of it?
It gets wet.
Yeah, good point. I'm thinking more along the lines of erosion and replacing that soil.
Where did the soil go?
Yeah,
which could happen because if you've ripped everything out, and in any bare spots for that matter, any ground that's loose, the crops may have been harvested from it. We may not have done anything to it. We may have just been. It took all our efforts just to get everything ripped out, and we walked away. So those are vulnerable situations then, because the soil might be loose. If the soil's packed down and intact, less is going to happen to it in those situations. In fact, no soil may leave the site. But where it's loose, or maybe you worked the soil up, you might have plowed it or rototilled it.
And if your yard's on a slope, it's all down at the bottom.
Yeah, you might have had any debris, as part of the cleanup. You may have just worked that in so that ground was loose. So then, you could be missing some soil.
Yeah. Now, if you planted your cover crop, maybe it came up in time to save some things.
Yes, one great reason to plant a cover crop, just to help hold the soil in place. And that's why we have sod. That's, a lot of cases, that's why we grow grass, because it helps hold the soil in place. Sometimes turf and lawn grass gets a bad name. Do away with that. But it has some very important good characteristics to it and jobs that it performs, especially in those areas where we might call them a swale. In fact, some conservation practices, they put in sod waterways. All right, so that's species of grass that we put in to help hold the soil, but also provide a route in those low spots for water to move, and it goes over that sod, but it doesn't take anything with it. So instead of paving that, and making it a drainage way, we use that plant material to perform that job. Water
always wants to find the easiest way out.
And it does.
And what will we see it in farm operations, when, especially in Pennsylvania, Western PA, with the hillsides that we have, and farmers planting corn on their hillsides, they contour that. They have a strip of grass between the two fields of corn so that it catches anything coming out.
And even a narrow strip. You might have one pass where you don't plow. You plow and then you leave a strip. That strip can hold back a lot and really help, even if it's not the whole field, or if we don't have a hay strip in there. And then all those contours, the width of those and how they're designed are all based on the slope and the situation that's there. So sometimes those are wider, sometimes they don't need to be as wide, because of the terrain and the way the water flows and how big the potential drainage area is.
All right, with the rain that came yesterday, there was also much wind last night.
Yes.
And all we need to do is look at Indiana County 911 to learn about that. So people might have lost some trees altogether. They might have lost some branches off of trees that are otherwise healthy. How do they treat those areas that have been wounded by the winds?
Yeah, you may have thought that you had good, healthy branches up there, but might have found out that they weren't so healthy. They could have had some internal decay in there that was not easily seen from the ground, or when the leaves were all on the tree. And I think this week, I think, was the peak, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For observing the leaves.
Yeah, peak's over now.
we're going the other way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there can be damage that you can't see, whether even a trained eye, not necessarily an untrained eye, but even a trained eye sometimes can't internally see what's inside those branches. So you can get surprised. There can be decay in there, there can be rot, it can be hollow. But if the outside, for the most part, is still intact with the bark, it might have been where a limb was, just one limb.
Yeah.
And that limb broke off, and then that decayed because it wasn't pruned off, and cut to allow that to grow back, grow the cells back and cover up that hole.
Heal.
That it decayed down the branch and maybe into the trunk.
So somebody whose tree last night broke off a limb or two, and maybe even close to the trunk, maybe further out, they should take the saw and make a nice clean cut there?
Yes, they should.
Okay.
Yeah. Safely.
Very important.
Preferably not off of ladders and things like that.
Yeah.
Especially with a chainsaw or something like that. Even though we know that's done, it's not the best way and safest way to do that.
There are professionals out there who will do that for you.
Yes.
But it will help preserve the life of the tree.
Yeah, and it also goes back to maintaining these. Even though they can start on their own, grow on their own. They don't always structurally make themselves a sound, healthy, good tree. That we do need to do some maintenance on them, especially if they're in our yards, near our homes. Anything that can be damaged, whether it be humans or property, those trees are candidates to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So we need to do some maintenance, pruning. Occasionally we're going to get some die back. You might have a limb die here or there, or the storm damage situation where we need to go in and preventively try to minimize the damage, clean it up the best we can, keep the tree going.
All right, let's take a caller. Good morning.
Hi, Bob.
Good morning.
I have a friend who has been growing potatoes and trying to store them in his house. He has a area that in his basement that is basically underground. He's insulated it and so forth, but still not getting the results that he would like. Is there a pamphlet at your office, or can he go online and to Penn State to get information about how to properly prepare a place to store potatoes?
Yes, that information is available in several of those ways. So, number one, potatoes need dark. So if they're not, completely in the dark, then we can start to have decay and sprouting occur, which is going to shorten the life of those. And we can, all we have to do is bring potatoes home from the store and leave them out on the counter, or even if we put them in the basement, if there's any light there that interrupts that storage, eventually, and it might be a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, they'll start to sprout, they'll start to shrivel up because they're using the energy in there to start and grow those sprouts and make a new plant again. And then temperature is key also. And you can have that getting close down to not too much above freezing. So the temperature, if we're still even in that, if he's built a spot, even if it stays in the 50s, those potatoes aren't going to store for near as long as they would if we had them down at 33 or 34 degrees. So that will definitely affect how many months those potatoes will store. And then going back to harvest, making sure that they're mature, that the skin, that when you harvest them, you bring them out and you get the most of the soil. You don't have to get all the soil off, but most of that off, and get that surface dried and essentially a little bit cured so that toughens up that skin. If the skin stays soft, or on a wet year where you harvest and they're full of moisture, they're not going to store as well as they would on a dry year. So that'll also affect that length of time that those can be kept.
So dark and cold basically is what
Yes.
you're after.
Definitely.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Bob Pollock with us this morning. By the way, our new sponsor of our interview segment starting today, Marcus and Mack, attorneys at law. So you are presented and protected by Marcus and Mack today.
There you go. I wondered why all those signs were here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations. You're the first of our interview subjects to be falling under that umbrella of protection.
All right. Excellent.
And we've got just about a minute left as we get rolling here. It's the month of November. People have taken their plants indoors.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. If they haven't, they're going to be.
Yeah.
Some of them won't be in good shape.
They haven't, it's already dead. But for
Yes.
those who've had their plants in for about a month now, what are the things they're looking for? What are the signs?
Well, just are any leaves starting to turn yellow? The tips of any branches starting to turn brown? Do you see any little white things on there? Mm-hmm. There are some insects, both scales, mealybugs, things like that can be, even aphids could be on there, especially if you brought them in, those tender plants brought them in even a few weeks ago. Yeah. There could be aphids on there, so you might see some little shiny spots on there, which could be sugary substance that was excreted by aphids. And other insects will also do that. The sucking insects will do that. So just look for that. Sticky, shiny. That'll can be an indication that we've got some insects feeding on there. And look at the soil. And then if we need to adjust, both temperature and light
and humidity.
We've been fairly humid yet, but now the old furnaces are really going to start to kick in and
they'll dry us out a little bit.
Dry us out some.
Okay, so, very good. He's
there
Bob Pollock, presented by Marcus and Mack, here this morning on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160 and 101.1 FM.